No, it's not a clickbait. I've turned down a 992 GT3 Touring Allocation, and this, ladies and gentlemen, is my story. Bear with me, it's going to be a lot of talking in this video, but some driving will appear. You know, turning down a 992 GT3 Touring Allocation might, end up in a stupidity list at some people, but this is my story and I'm going to try to explain how I ended up where I am. Today I get over 200 questions from you viewers. I would like to thank you for that. What a community we have started. The most common question, which I am so bored of, is why don't you have more subscription? But there are some serious questions where people are actually asking me for advice on which model should I select and how should I spec it. I'm very honored to get those questions. And the most common answer is that make a list on how you're going to use your vehicle and then proceed. In my case, the list is extremely short. B-road drive. Because during the COVID time, I have actually, I don't miss going on track days. That's the ugly truth. Which means I have one purpose for my Porsche driving at this point, and that is B-road drive. And everything was going according to plan. I sold the 992 Carrera S, and then weeks later I sold the 718 Spider. Just listen to this, selling two of these beautiful cars to buy the GT3 Touring. Just think about that. My bank called me and asked, do you have any plans for your money on your account? And I said, yes, I'm going to buy a sports car. So that's the start, right? But things started to turn differently when I visit the new owner of my 992 Carrera S a few weeks later, when I still saw the joy of an excitement and euphoria he has during, living through owning a 911. I started to drive Porsches when I was 19, and it was a long time ago I had that euphoria by just owning a Porsche. That made me thinking. All that started to spin up, if you understand what I mean. The thoughts, all the questions, which you could call a crisis, but in comparison to health and other problems in the world, it's just pathetic, isn't it? Call it a Porsche crisis or luxury crisis. And perhaps I'm there in a luxury crisis. Oh, sounds bad, doesn't it? Anyway, continue. If I then look at the specification when the GT3 was launched, I saw the double wishbone suspension in the front axle. If you haven't driven a car with that, then you would just assume it is just a further development. But I know from the very point when I read that this is going to be a huge step from the 991. The corner speeds will increase dramatically and the braking ability, everything goes, boom, up a big notch. It is a race car, ladies and gentlemen. It is not a driver's car anymore. It's for race drivers. And that was my thought before I even saw it live. And that also made me think, am I equipped? Can I dress these shoes? Moving forward, and when the GT3 Touring was launched, I opened the, configurator. And then it's when all these small things just started to bubble inside of me with desperation and frustration. Exclusive leather manufacturer package in a Touring. Remember, the only thing that differs the Touring from the regular Club Sport is the rear wing. It is still a race car. It's nothing that you play around with. It's not a tool anymore. And that made me thinking of a video which I saw from Porsche Club America years ago, where Tom Neal spec'd Touring, a 991.2 Touring for George. And I had so much emotion from that video. First of all, this is my religion, and my religion was, it was a total collision between Neal's and mine. I cannot explain how hard that impact was. Because as I mentioned, all 911 has its range, and their goal was to create the ultimate gentleman sports car. And for me, from my perspective, the 911S was introduced for that specific purpose that also led to the Carrera RS. The Carrera S holds that position quite heavily. And today, if you use a Carrera S and option out the X51 package boom, ladies and gentlemen, that's where you have the ultimate gentleman's sports car. And then if you throw in the spec Neil did, that's unique. That's what frames the essence of a gentleman's sports car. The GTS moves on to, starting to be a bit loud, but throwing in all these driver's items, throwing in that kind of a deal package. But the ultimate gentleman's sports car is the sleeper, it's the Carrera S. And looking at his specification, it makes me even worse, because one of the foundations of speccing your own car is to make it your own. In George's case, he's driving Neil's car. And what I interpretate from the videos that Porsche Club America, which I respect to 100%, authorized and published in their name, it feels like he's okay driving Neil's car. And that, when I start to think, am I a proper Porsche customer anymore? I mean, throwing in some luxury items. I never bought a car to be cool. I never bought a car to show off for my friends. I buy my Porsche because I love driving. I like the experience. I like the drive. And perhaps I'm not the Porsche customers anymore. Well, you can see where I'm heading. So a car like Neil's specification, on throwing all these silly items into a GT3, regardless if it is a touring or a club sport, well, it makes the car look, it just feels awkward. It's not a driver's car, it's not a luxury car, it's just tasteless. Let me show you instead. This is an example of what I'm talking about. This is a GT car, motorsport car, and with the 992, huge step from the 991. This is a race car, ladies and gentlemen. And if we look at this spec with tinted windows, and if I open it, well, that's when it really turns ugly. Look at all this nonsense in this vehicle. Deviated stitching, leather, and on top of the Bose sound system. And this is as far from a race car you can get. It just looks ridiculous. And yes, I presume there is a lot of viewers now that are a bit angry with me because the collision of the religions are quite heavily at this point. But I did expect something more from Porsche when they made such a huge step from the previous GT3, really making it a race car, to make sure there are some different options. Let me show my expectation from Porsche in the equipment list. So I made a proper list of options that I think should be available in the GT3 range today. This goes both for the Touring and the GT3. First off, roll cage for the Touring. This is 100% race car. Why should not be able to increase the safety nest in the Touring? I mean, even more important if you're not going to go track day. Just to make this clear, this is not a car to roll in streets. It's a track tool, regardless if it is a Touring package or a Club Sport package. I think one of the most important options that I miss is passenger seat delete. To make sure I don't bring any passengers if something happens. To have that responsibility on you is huge. And when I go on the track days I drive, I don't want to have a passenger that might get hurt because of my driving, because this car is extremely fast. And on top of that, also the possibility to delete the sun visor, because well, actually you could go to start with the sun visor and then you can, take out the seat yourself. But to remove that at least shows the total heritage towards the 86 Carrera Club Sport. And while we add it, why don't we have the option to have interior carpet delete to make sure that we go all the way in the racing car? I start to question if we need all these different GT3 models at this point. We have the Touring, we have the GT3 Club Sport and upcoming RS. No, I think we should have the opportunity to have interior carpet delete. I mean, imagine a Touring with a roll cage and interior carpet delete. Rest my case. Moving forward, it would be nice to have a one push button extinguishing system. I mean, when you're looking at Nürburgring upside down, it would be quite nice to just push a button to make sure that fire goes out. Then adding some really extra race car attributes, side window in plastic with sliding opening. I mean, why should you be able to pull the window down? Just ridiculous. That would be some cool option to have. And then going even one step further, adding the Cup Car lightweight doors. I think that summarizes. If these options was on the list, at least Porsche would take responsibility to say, hey guys, just for your information, this is a race car. What do you say? Should we take a drive? So what has all this nonsense about equipment and options doing with me turning down an allocation? I start to feel alone, ladies and gentlemen. It starts to feel that I'm sliding away from the Porsche community. It feels like, am I the only one looking at the GT3 and just thinking about it as a race car and a track car only? Since everybody just starts to turn it into a luxury item. And it doesn't get better when you start to drive the car as I'm doing right now. Let's just have it in normal mode and just throw down a couple of gears and have a light corner in front of me, and it's like, what is happening? Because, oh, now I'm braking also. You see, there is no in between in this car. It is such a powerful item that it takes a lot of energy from me to really drive this vehicle. So my thought before I turned down the allocation was, okay, Janko, here's what you're going to do. You're going to buy the GT3 Touring. You're going to go on as many track days that you possibly can. You need to go to some driving courses to fit these shoes, because that's the ultimate problem for me. I'm not able to fit these shoes. They are too large for me. It is an extreme driver's tool, race driver's tool, not a driver's tool, it's a race driver's tool. And I'm not thinking that I'm gonna have as much fun in this car, because I'm gonna be terrified, at least for the first 1 or 2 years when I try to reach another level of my driving. And I realized I don't have the time for that. And to be honest, I'm not sure I have the money either, because then I will most likely spend 40 to 50,000 euros on track days and educations and tires and everything that comes with it. And that's where I realized that I'm not the gentleman that's going to buy this vehicle. So what is my dream car then? Well, first of all, I guess I have stopped my development then, and as a driver, perhaps that's what I'm saying, fine by me. But imagine a 992 Carrera T, naturally aspirated engine, not necessary, but a short shifted gearbox, top speed 250. I don't need more. Just that I have to be heavily engaged. And what do I need? 350 horsepower. The recent 992 GTS was just launched, and I got a few mails where you actually asked me what I think about the new GTS, and I kind of end up with who needs it? I mean, looking back in time, adding 30 horsepower, all that was quite essential. But today, the Carrera S is brutal. I think you have seen my reviews of the Carrera S. I own 2 of them. I never thought that I needed more horsepower. I needed more stability in the corners. I needed other things from that vehicle. That's why I installed the Lind's chassis. But never in my lifetime I need more horsepower in that vehicle. And therefore I think it is a better purchase to buy a Carrera S and just add the options that you would like to have. And what I'm also thinking about, I'm just going to pass this car. Listen to the engine, by the way. Okay, that still puts a big smile on my face. It really does, doesn't it? I mean, it has that motorsport engine that really throws you the connection to the engine. It's remember the GT4 and the Spider. That's not a motorsport engine, and you understand why when you drive such a vehicle like the GT3. And that's what I mean. The Carrera T should have an engine like this, but just 3 liters, naturally aspirated, 350 horsepower, short gearing. Nevertheless, one car that really has impressed me last year is the 992 Turbo. That really got me thinking, because that car is also faster than I am, but there you have. Remember in my review what I stated. This is a meeting between the rebel and the queen, and it could not be more accurate. And that's, ladies and gentlemen, that's one option for me, to go with the 992 Turbo, because this race car is equipped and designed for race drivers, and I cannot fit these shoes. So will I then buy a 992 Turbo? I'm not sure at this point. I think I need to, take a break for a couple of months to see where my thoughts are going and where my heart is going. You also have to understand where I jumped off and understand the process here in Sweden. The first thing is that you sign an agreement that you say, yes, I'm going to buy a GT3. And that's the point where I jumped off. But believe me, when Porsche Center is calling you an hour before it opens and make sure I have an appointment to sign such an agreement, you know that you're in a position where you're actually going to get an allocation. And that's where I turn out, because I have a history with Porsche since I was 19 years old, and I don't want to destroy what I have built up. I don't want to sign such an agreement saying that, yes, I'm going to buy it, and then when they find a factory slot for me saying, no, I don't want to go ahead. That's not what I would like to do. So that's the point where I jumped off. Do I regret selling the Spider? Perhaps I do. But at the same time, my heart is very close to the 911, and that's what I think I would like to have. We also know that there are more models coming up. We have the GT4 RS, we have the Spider RS, we have a Carrera T. Will those suit me? Is there some older car that I actually should go back to? I have no clue. But I do have one precious thing, my Porsche 928. And this is where I started my career. I was a young boy, and the very first Porsche I was sitting in, moving forward, was a Porsche 928. I actually had a nightmare the other day where I dreamt that this was my last Porsche. What if that is the truth? Here we are then, 992 GT3, and we are performing a launch control. Here we go. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. But this is not this car's party piece. No, not at all. And if you've been driving the 992 Turbo, well, that's where we have the party piece. It's so intense doing a launch control in a 992 Turbo. But that's not what scares me with this vehicle. Any imbecile can just go in a straight line with this car, no problem at all. It is the corner speed, ladies and gentlemen. It's so intimidating. But I had an argument with an old friend the other day, and he said, and I quote, "Janko, I've been driving a lot with you, and the way you throw cars into the corners, it is in a very high speed. And would you might or consider that most of the owners driving of this vehicle perhaps will not go or reach that corner speed, saddle with less?" But I don't want to be that gentleman. I don't want to be the gentleman where I am such a limit for the car that the car just, okay, are we driving yet? I would like to make sure that I could perform with my car properly and making sure that I'm connected. I want to be one with the car. And in the corners with this car, I'm afraid, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not comfortable, I'm afraid. On a straight line I can clearly see if there is any obstacle, but when I throw this car into a corner on a B road, who knows what's around the corner? And in that speeds, 2 large shoes here, ladies and gentlemen, 2 large shoes. Oh, I wish I could settle for not being this guy that are so passionate of driving, because then I would have bought this car. Just throwing it in a mediocre speed in the corner and go, wow, what a car! I'm not that guy. I throw the cars into the limits. Oh, it feels like I'm a super bike driver and I'm about to get killed. That's not a good feeling, ladies and gentlemen. Stuttgart, congratulations, or Flacht, I must say. This is engineering at a level where you, at this point at least, scares away me as a customer. Don't misunderstand me, this car gives you a lot of confidence. And that's confidence is what brings me to throw this car into a huge speed into the corner. And remember, that's when I have braked and made the car ready to turn the steering wheel. Tom and George, please accept my apology if you feel offended when I put you in the line of fire describing how I feel that I'm sliding off the Porsche community. Please accept my apology. We are just passionate car people, but preaching totally different religions. The GT3. I never said I would say that, no, this is not the car for me, but these shoes are too huge for me. Is this my last Porsche? I certainly don't hope so, but it's a lot of things happening inside of me at this point when I kind of lost my home ground.